We're all looking at the same thing. Today we're drilling down very heavily on fairness. And if I hold this speech bell out, just yell out, shout out, what color can you see from where you're sitting? Okay, none of you can see the orange because that's the one facing me. Don't spill your coffee. Finding fairness is about helping everyone be successful. And this definition came to us through a friend of mine, Jim Snyder, out in the East, whose daughter was involved in a lot of ag situations. This is a definition I think that is going to be easier for you than the definition that you typically hear in Alberta. Fair isn't always fair. It's just, and it sometimes can't be equal. Have you ever heard that? Fair is not equal. Is that helpful? Absolutely not. So that's what we want to dwell in on this morning. So I need you to talk to me. This is my phone number. This is why Peter asked you to put your phones on. Please put this text in your phone right now. And I want you to text to me, what is your biggest issue in the issue of fairness in farm transition? And I use the word farm transition because we don't use the word succession anymore. Succession is like there's a king on the throne and dad or mom has to get knocked off. That's not happening anymore. I met with a family yesterday where the mom said he hasn't decided what day he's going to quit. And I said, he's not quitting. That's right, because farmers aren't quitting, they're reinventing their roles. So wipe the word retirement off your planning page. And those of you who are the field men and field people going to all of those farms in Alberta, the reason I'm standing up here today is because I want you now to become me, the farm family coach in your county. 204-534-7466, government, Elaine, letting go. Who gets the homestead? Having 10 brothers and sisters. The government tax implications, siblings. Yes, siblings, I've done a blog on that about what do you do with the non-farming heirs. There's always someone who feels they've been done out of something. I didn't get anything. If you really love me, you'd give me $100,000. Need to bring back small farms. Balance between siblings. How do you split up the farm? Should you? Control issues, incorporating a farm. I need them to farm the same way I did. It's dad's way or the highway. Overtaxation. Okay, you can stop now. This is good. Oh, except I have to say this one for Peter Brown's benefit. King Justin's cut. Oh, and I can't repeat what this one says. We are, of course, in Alberta. I used to carry redneck scarves, and when I got heckled from the front, I'd throw one out and I'd say, oh, yes, I'm in Alberta. Welcome to the Redneck Club. And I say that with deep love for Alberta. Because I come here often, thanks to WestJet flying out of Brandon, Manitoba, and I need to hear what's going on. Oh man, I'll write a whole book on what you guys have told me here. Equality doesn't always appear equal. Almost everything is going to one sibling. Dealing with the non-farm siblings that have never been on the farm, and why aren't we all treated fairly, and how to be fair with 3 boys. Okay, are you ready? We have an hour. Text this now. You've got your phone in your hand. These are called lead pages. Text this number, 1-587-800-4323, and in the message line you put in all caps, fairness. And what you're going to get is this presentation in its form in terms of an article that I've written for Grey News, and you're going to have it hot off the press because you're going to get it as soon as you go back to your email, because it'll attach to your email. Oh man, you're still coming. Mechanisms that will allow for a reasoned financial entry point for specifically young, new farming family members. I'm so glad you said that, because I have a little story to tell you. In 1945, my mother-in-law bought her father's farm. A woman and her husband bought a farm in 1945, 2 miles out of Boissevain, Manitoba. They almost lost it in the 30s when her dad had just been a new immigrant from Russia. Fast forward now to 1992. Wes and I are coming back from the Rockies from a ski trip with his sisters who both live in Calgary. One lives in Cochrane. I was just there for the weekend. Dad gets lost in the Brooks Esso station. I said, Wes, something's wrong with your dad. And my husband, Mr. Ambitious Determined, picks up the phone and says, hello, Mr. Accountant, we need to meet you. We need to make some concrete plans. And as we do that, we're sitting in the office, and I can still smell the office. Do you know what your accountant office smells like? Go back there with me. Okay? And a hard chair. Why do they always have hard chairs in accountant's offices? And he says to my parents-in-law, pretend Elaine is not in the room. Now here's your first tool. What if? What if Wes, your son, who you want to sell the farm to, what if he was killed at the railway crossing? What would you do, Abe and Margaret Froese? We'd like to take back the farm. I'm sitting right here. No, I'm Irish. I have a Mennonite name, but I'm not a drama queen, okay? And I went, oh, that's really interesting, Mom. That's what I called her because I saw her a lot more than my own mother who lived in another farm near Dugald. I said, Mom, I've given you 2 grandchildren. I brought government income when I married Wes in 1981, the same month as Chuck and Di. And by the way, we've lasted a lot longer than they did, right? So 36 years later, but 1992, we're sitting in the office and I say, I am not going back to my farm at Dugald, just outside of Winnipeg. If anything happens to Wes, I'm farming with the children and giving them legacy. Okay, Elaine, sounds good. Now I want you to hang on to that story because that's a what-if story. What if your children, the engineers, the dentists, the doctors of Alberta, are wealthier than your clients, or you are? What if they economically don't need anything? So this is what you are going to get in that article you just texted. My acronym for what is fair in Alberta in 2018. And the first one is financial transparency. So let's fast forward to 1998 with my parents. My mother is 65. My farming brother is running 5,000 acre on a farm that's been expropriated 9 times by the city of Winnipeg. That's how close I was. I lived 15 minutes from downtown Winnipeg growing up, which was a problem when our cows landed in our neighbor's swimming pool. But that's another story. Okay? You know these problems. I flew over Airdrie, Alberta 3 times yesterday. Well, in the last 24 hours. Because it took us 3 flights to get here because of the ice fog. And there's 2 women, Jane's in the audience and Kim. Kim and Jane and I met on the plane, figuring out how are we going to get to Grand Prairie. But when I flew over those houses in Airdrie and I saw those sections, because some of those families have called me and said, Elaine, what do we do? This quarter is worth $2 million. So in Alberta and in Manitoba, we have a huge issue now, of course, with financial transparency. Can your son or daughter afford to buy your farm? I didn't hear you. No. Absolutely not. So here's the next tool for you. What if is a good one. Here's another one. In 1992, at that meeting at the accountant's office, Wes and I negotiated to pay fair market value for our seed farm for $500,000. Wouldn't that be nice? When I give that number to the farmers I work with now, they go, Elaine, that's like almost a quarter section where we live right now. And here's the tool. That was then, and this is now. Let's all say it together. That was then, and this is now. Come on, the coffee should be working by now. Okay? That was then, and this is now. So the whole thing is important that you understand that things are not going to be the same as they were for you or your parents. And we have to remember this is 2018. Attitudes towards money are intent and role expectations. And the R also stands for rebels. Because one of you said, Elaine, what do you do with the people that aren't on page or on side? Oh, here's Orwell. Here we have a writer in the audience. All are created equal, just some are a little more equal than others. And that's, of course, where we have farm-family conflict, correct? So let's go through this. What do you need to discuss in terms of finances? And Merle Good, who many of you know and have enjoyed listening to and done work with, has the concept of a personal wealth bubble, which we'll get into. Our son went in with my husband, 2 next-door neighbors, and they did the unthinkable. They put in a land tender for 9 quarters of land as a group of farmers. And last week I was in Miami Beach, Florida, for 24 hours. And this man in the front, he goes like this, he goes, "No way, Elaine, that doesn't happen." I said, you know, it does happen if we have a mindset shift in agriculture, which is, how can we collaborate to make everyone be successful? So what the guys did, 4 different families put in the tender as a group, and we beat out some hotshot investment firm in Toronto, which was really important because that land touches my farm. Okay? So we need to figure out how we can collaborate. Gifts to heirs, we'll go into this a bit. The viability of the farm. One of you just said, well, how can we cut up the farm? And I don't think a farm is a piece of pie. I'm sorry. I'm just looking for some more quotes here. Oh, parents won't let me take them over our buyout. Or I think he's saying, parents won't let me take them over or buy out the sister. Okay, so there we have that, gifts to heirs. Because the viability piece is, how many families can this farm in 2018 support? And what are our income stream expectations? So I'm working with a farm family and I ask the parents, what do you need? And so all of you who are my age, which is 61 or older, I'm curious, do you have a number? Okay, here's your next text to me. What is your number that you need for family living? Okay, what's your income stream? My income stream bubble is $40,000 a year from our farm and $80,000 from our piggy bank, which is our personal wealth bubble, other investments or other things. I'm not collecting that yet, but that's the plan. And some of you young people are saying, holy cow, Elaine, how am I ever going to do that? I can't even barely make my truck payments and my mortgage payments right now. Yeah, but that might be because you bought an $85,000 truck. Whoa, she's getting testy now. I rode in that $85,000 truck last December to a meeting with a very young farmer whose father just died. And I kind of said to him, I'll call him Charlie. I said, Charlie, you know, I really need you to understand that I'm a home economist by degree. And you got to put investing and pay down debt on stuff that's going to make you money. And I'm just curious, on your farm, how is this expensive truck making you money? He said, yeah, but I'm 25 and I deserve a nice truck. You know, I know you're an Albertan in Manitoba because you're the one passing me on the highway. I also know you're an Albertan because you would never, ever park your truck nose in. It always has to be nose out. And actually, that's a good tool that I've learned from you because I have fewer accidents now that I never back up. It's a really good thing. Okay, so the income stream is the first piece. So, okay, nobody's telling me anything. Oh, I only have 2 answers so far. Now, this is very telling. So listen to this. $50,000, next text, is $100,000. A little bit of a gap there. But this family I was working with, the parents wanted $120,000. So I went back to the farm 2 years later and I said, by the way, what was that number? And they said, oh, Elaine, it's $38,500. Because that's all that 3-son ranch could cash flow. So debt servicing to me is a big deal. How much are you expecting to have to buy from your parents or from your grandmother or from your aunt or your uncle? And how much are you expecting to be gifted to you? Because I'll tell you another story where I was in this family meeting and the son said, you know, Dad, it'd be just so much better if you would just die. Then I could have your life insurance. Good response. Appropriate emotional response. That is exactly what he said. And the parents were mortified. I also need to tell you, I sat on the farm debt mediation service as a mediator for 10 years. I've seen a lot of interesting approaches to servicing debt. But this is where you need financial transparency, because if you're like my farmer in BC, who's 75 years old with $2 million debt, he's not going to transition anything until he's debt-free. What's the likelihood of that? Death is, right? We've already talked about viability, and I don't know your portfolio of skill sets as a service board person, but highly, highly recommend that you start talking about the financial smarts of the farmers that you're working with, because many of them are holding it way too close to their chest. And if they could just reach out and get communication, they'd be in a much better place. So viability becomes the ability of what's the big picture and what's the risk. So my son Ian is 29, and he married a girl from the city. Well, that's the response she was getting, because she said, Elaine, I go shopping at Co-op, and as soon as I tell people that I'm from the city, they stop talking to me. Why are they doing that? I said, well, Kendra, that's easy. That's easy. They're just judging you. Get over it. And she's amazing, because I had to just teach her about long-term debt, intermediate debt, and current debt, because now she understands that $1 million that we owe for the guy next door who got divorced, whose land Ian bought, doesn't have to be paid by next Friday, okay? So how financially transparent are you? Next part of FAIR is A. What do you think about money? And let me tell you, the reason I love Alberta is because when you call me, you say, Elaine, when can you come? How soon can I send the check? And maybe next week we'll talk about the money, or at the end of the conversation. You have an amazing culture here that you probably don't know you have. So your attitude towards money is, let's get her done. Let's pay it, let's invest it, and let's build it right the first time. And then my son told me there's another new saying, and it's called this: buy once, cry once. Have you heard that? You haven't heard that? I've never heard that. That was when we bought the $35,000 snow blade last winter, which was the high quality one, to push 8 feet of snow out of our yard so the semis could get around our seed business. Buy once, cry once. What's your attitude towards money? What does money mean to you? Bruce Sellery, a friend of mine in Toronto who's a financial planner who's also done Oprah TV, has one really good question, and that's it at the bottom there. What does money mean to you? Money to me means freedom and generosity, because that's the age I'm at right now. If you're 25 and paying for that expensive truck and your mortgage in downtown Three Hills, then money means something totally different. It means survival. Now, what do you do as a parent when one of your daughters is a doctor, your son's an engineer, and your other child is a farmer? Where is it written as a parent that you are to make all of your children economically equal? Money does not equal love. But unfortunately, in the family I was mediating, the father was found dead on the floor on Monday morning. I had just worked with the family on Friday to do a mediation. And at the funeral, the kids came up to me and they said, Elaine, thank you for giving Dad the 3 best days of his life. And I said, what? He said, you helped solve that issue over land with my uncle that they'd been fighting about for 30 years. Dad's never been happier. Unfortunately, his asthma kicked in and I found him dead on the floor on Monday. And the other unfortunate thing is that his new will, which we were getting ready based on your mediation, was not signed. So 2 non-farming sisters are refusing to sign off a farm that has now just been willed 1/3 to Charlie, 1/3 to June, and another 1/3 to Lois. And I made up those names. If you really loved me, you would die so I could get your life insurance policy. No. If you really loved me, you'd give me $100,000 by next Friday. No. This is called emotional bullying or emotional blackmail, and the book is called Susan Forward. On your table, some of you have little white sheets. These are my feedback sheets. Otherwise, you can come back to my book table and give me the business card. But money does not equal love in my books, but you better find out what it equals in the books of the people that you're dealing with, because that's really important. The other thing is, what do you believe in terms of the culture of where you work on your farm, where you work at your field board service office, and what do you value? Because we're in the position right now to sit down with our coach, and we took Post-it notes and put them on a flip chart. I'm on the road most of January empowering farm families because that's how I'm wired, to be independent and to communicate and to have trust and to have a lot of life stories that maybe can give you some tools to make your life better. But this is my son Ian. He's wired for innovation, he's wired for teamwork, he's also wired for people. He's been in 9 wedding parties. People really like this guy. So when we did his personal assessment, which I do on farm families, we found out he's responsive balance, which means he cares about people first. Where his father is not so much that way, he's more task-oriented. So when we talk about fairness, let's discover what we care about and what we value and what we trust, and discover what really drives us. I told a woman at the back I felt like a racehorse, waiting to get out of the gate, waiting to play basketball, waiting to do my Highland dancing or whatever. I love being here in front of you, but I only have a few minutes to be standing here. This is not a motivational speech. This is get her done. Because I want you to have a rock and roll farm, and I want you to have a rock and roll Ag Service Board office where everybody's clear about what the core beliefs are in your workplace driving you. Because if fairness in farm families is not only about money and land, it's also about the guy with 10 brothers. I could bet my bottom dollar that some of those brothers are not working very hard, but they're all getting paid the same thing. Because in this family, if we have 4 children, boom, to boom, to boom, to boom, they all get the same thing. Now, many of you are Ukrainian background culture. Many of you are German. Some of you are Dutch. Some of you are British. Some of you are Irish. You have a backstory. Grandpa and Grandma's voice is sitting right here saying, this is what we need to do. No, we need to sit, face each other in a chair, and listen to what the other person really needs and wants. I want you to do this. I think, I feel, I need, I want. Do that together. I think, I feel, I need, I want. I think it's time for us to know what's in the will, Dad. It's 2018. We're trying to buy land in the Peace region, and we don't know if we should expand with buying our own land or if you have some intended for us. Well, I don't want to tell you. Okay. Mom does, Dad doesn't, or vice versa. But what is the concern? And here's why listening is such a huge gift. The concern is, I think that you have been very generous with us, Mom and Dad. I feel very grateful for all you've done and the leg ups you've given us. But I'm anxious. I feel anxious not knowing what the plan is because there's so much uncertainty in how much debt we can service. So I want to know, am I getting some land from you in the future for sure, and that will be part of our growth pattern, or what's the deal here? Was that a hard conversation? Depends who you are. Depends if you're from a culture that says, don't worry about it, it's all in my will. A will is for when you're dead. That's an estate plan. A succession plan is for now, okay? So the next piece of fair is, what the heck is in your head? So when I started to tell you about my mom being 65 in July of 1998, we again are sitting in an accountant's office, but it's a much nicer one. This one's in Winnipeg, in the big city. And I tell my mom, I'm the oldest child, Mom. Gracie's gone. Gracie, my sister, was killed by a drunk driver going from my farm to her farm when she was only 23, new grad. So I'm the oldest now of 4 children. And I tell my mom, Mom, I don't need anything from your estate, but I need you to understand that the bull that we're not talking about here is the fact that my brother needs your shares to have a good, viable farm. Because our farm near Winnipeg we were the Manitoba farm family of 1974. I've ridden in a parade, woohoo. The thing about poster children in agriculture is that the Irish have a saying that says, every front door looks beautiful. There's another saying you should remember. Because it may look like the families that you're visiting and the weeds that you're checking and the rats that are no longer in Alberta, all the good stuff, the things that you're doing, you just get this sense in your gut, there's something not quite right on this farm, I don't know what it is. And that's this. It's what they're not talking about. So 6 weeks later, on September 4th, my mother died of an asthma attack. Her will also was not signed, the new one. Are you hearing a theme here? If I had my clickers and if I had more time with you, I would get you to wiggle, let's do it right now. Wiggle your right foot if you have a will that's valid. Okay, I'm looking for right feet. Okay, I see feet that are not wiggling. In this room, there's 25% of you likely who do not have a will. What is your intent? To leave your family in chaos? So a founder needs to be taken care of first. So I'm going to look at your text again and tell me what you're telling me. I'm stirring the water here because you're starting to chat, so that's good. Should you be gifting the farm to your children or selling it to them? Should you be gifting your children or selling it to them? If you're the guy or woman who texted me that, I encourage you to read the book called Time, Eternity, and Possessions by Randy Alcorn, who says it's not a healthy thing to give your kids $5 million. So you might want to talk about a mix, okay? Oh, this is a really long one. The competitive nature of our Western economy creates imbalances, unfair conditions for many. It's unfair that the word economy means saving and efficiency, yet we equate it to wanton waste and production. How much more crap do we need to feel fulfilled? This person's 50 years old, by the way. No, he didn't tell me that, or she didn't tell me that, but I'll explain that in a minute. It's not fair that we need to feel pressured by media and celebrity to be like them when it's an unachievable facade. Great text. Okay, good. There you are. You can self-identify. And by the way, you can all come and visit me for the next 5 hours because I don't have to leave till 3:30, so that's good. So the thing here with the founder's needs, the intent is, I have no idea what you people are thinking right now. Another tool is, love does not read minds. I can't read your mind, and I don't know if I love you yet, but I certainly like you. So love does not read minds, but the founders in transition need to be taken care of first, because if mom and dad or grandma and grandpa are taken care of, then it's going to be a better, stronger foundation for the next one, right? Then the next one is, who's the farm manager? And in Alberta, as you already told me, what if there's 4 or 5 of them on the same business? That's when it gets complicated, and you can't assume what the other person is thinking, feeling, needing, and wanting, because you don't know until you talk. And so what you need to do is go clean out your kid's stuffy closet, which I'm sure there's more than one at your house, and get something like this to use as a talking stick. So when I am at a family meeting and I'm holding the bowl, I get to talk. And then I say, Charlie, and then I pass it to Charlie. Then there's family needs, and I'm going to be very transparent with you because I am a walking story of succession and fairness and transition. I told my mom I didn't need anything from her estate. She died September 4th. What did I get from my mother in her will? Nothing. I was not even mentioned. So as far as she, a lawyer reading my will, I did not exist. That's okay. Because my mother, 5 years before she died, gave me a full-length black ranch mink coat, which unfortunately I did not wear to Grand Prairie. I should have. Would have been interesting. Because when you wear a mink coat, people treat you differently, and they say, oh, seed business must be good. And I go, this was a gift from my dead mother. No, I don't say that. I just think that. My point is, I was loved and cherished by my mother every day of my life till I left home after university to move to Boys Vein with Manitoba Agriculture in 1978. She kissed me every night. She tucked me in tight because she was a nurse. And she said, good night, precious, I love you. My emotional bank account from my mother's estate is full to the brim. And that's what we need to understand here, that it's not about money. It's about relationship and richness. And yes, the money's important for whatever money means to you. But what does the family What does the family need? I did not need my mother's estate, although my brothers did go to my father later and say, you know what, Dad, give Elaine something. And so my father did, 6 digits, part of her life insurance. But he did it with resentment because he was born in 1926 and he has a scarcity mentality, whereas I have an abundance mentality. And it hurt me more to understand that my dad didn't really want me to have this gift. Children are no longer on the farm, but they say they want the home quarter left to them as it's been in the family for over 90 years or so. Of course it has, because you started coming to Alberta to get land for free in 1872. That was then. This is, okay, good, you're getting it. So here we have the next point about what is your intent? What is the vision? Perfect timing, by the way. What is your vision for the legacy? How do you wish to be remembered? And there's huge sentiment attached to that homestead quarter because that was great-granddad's or great-grandmother's. And I have fights over raspberry patches. Can I come and pick the raspberries if I leave this place? Can I store my horses here? Elaine, we bought this, but my brother's been stealing all the wagon wheels. I'm going to have to take him to court over wagon wheels. My life is never dull. I have just 1,000 stories I could tell you, but we don't have the time for that today. So what is this person supposed to do with the kids that are emotionally attached? You sit down and you have a family meeting, and in a plane, and this is a true story, I'm flying from Edmonton to Calgary so I can get back to Brandon to drive home to Boisvine, and the guy beside me says, what do you do? Farm family coach. You know this is only a very short flight, correct? And he says, oh, my parents live in Yorkton. I said, oh, good, I'm going through Yorkton next week on my way to Carrot River. He said, I want you to go and talk to my parents. Okay, what do you want me to talk about? I wanted to talk to them about, I have this very successful business in Calgary, but I want to buy the homestead. And we're having some issues around that. But if you'll go and talk to them, I'll pay you $300 for your drop-off fee for your rent-a-car when you drive back from Carrot River. Done deal. My husband says I'm highly self-promoting. I just think I'm smart, but we'll debate that. Okay. So my point is, same issue. What is the emotional attachment? And you're never going to know that until you start sitting down to get into people's heads to figure out what is your intention. So the day before we got title to our farm, I lived in my mother-in-law's house, just FYI, for 11 years without owning it. Do you think I spent very much money on renovation? No. So in 1992, we bought the farm, but on June 15th, the day before we signed the papers, Dad comes driving in with his camera, which of course didn't look like this. And we said, Dad, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm going to take a picture. Well, what are you going to take a picture of? The farm. Why? Because today is the last day that it is mine. Right? It's the emotional factors affecting planning. We have a new course called Get Unstuck, which deals with, if you can't deal with the emotional factors on your farm families that you guys are rubbing up against, you're never going to get anywhere, okay? So it's really important. So you need to share, why is this so important to you? Do mom and dad agree? Do grandma and grandpa agree? What is it we want? Last summer, Ian says, Dad, we've got too much land. And my husband says, you're 29 years old and you think 5,000 acres is too much? What's going on? He said, Dad, I've got a new baby. I'm tired. We got to get more labor here or something's got to change. And so that's a vision deal. So if the founders are fighting and don't agree, like, show them the will. No, I don't want to show them will. It's better. Elaine Froese said we should have financial transparency. I don't care what Elaine Froese says. She's an idiot. She's not German. Okay. And my due respect, I just used the word German. I respect all cultures. But you have to understand that in my training in conflict resolution and mediation, culture impacts what we think. When I work with a Dutch family, a lot of times the father says, Elaine, all I want to know is, was I right? more. Elaine. And you're laughing, but you understand that these are conversations that are really hard to have. Another one is, what do you do with the people who are rebelling what the transition plan is? And that's why the conversation, I'd like you just right now, put your hands out like this, okay? Put your hands out like this. This is the receiving position. So in this position right now, think about everything your parents or your grandparents have done for you or given to you in terms of opportunity, time, all kinds of freedom. You are all very wealthy people because you slept in a nice bed last night, you can read, and you've had a good breakfast. Do we understand that? So we have received, as Canadians, much bounty. Now I want you to put your hand like this. Go like this with your hands. My mother-in-law, Margaret Froese, took 4 months to die in palliative care in Steinbach, Manitoba. She taught me a lot. And she said, Elaine, it's the hand on top that's more powerful than the hand on the bottom. And that's what's so hard for parents, is because they do want to give good things to their children, but they also have to be able to receive because they've had a pattern of giving and giving and giving. And I had a man recently just tear up. And in a family meeting, which I now do by Zoom.us on video conferencing because I can record the meeting, I saw the tears starting to come. And all the kids are just like, Dad's starting to cry. And that was awesome because I knew we'd hit a heartstring for Dad. And I looked at him through the computer and I said, it's okay. You're carrying a lot. Your biggest fear is, are things going to fail? If I transfer this now, are the kids going to screw it up and lose it? But you're also afraid of the stress because you're getting tired. This last harvest, you were really pooped. And you'd actually like to start having some fun because you've sacrificed a lot for a long time. And then I said, let the silence do the heavy lifting. And it's a coaching practice. I hope every man in this room is comfortable with your own tears, the tears of your wife, and the tears of your father and your kids. Because crying is healthy and it also shows deep concern and emotion. And here's my marriage tip. Wes was not good with my crying in the beginning of our marriage. And so this is what he's learned to do. He comes into the living room and if I'm having a really good cry, he says, is this about me? And I go, nope. And then he says, have a good cry, Elaine. Okay, but let's look what's on this page. What is my fair DNA pay for being part of this family? Those are the exact words which you can find on my blog called, what is fair DNA? What do I get for just being a kid in this family? Well, what do I get? No, I'm not trying to grab with this hand. What do I receive or what should I expect? And you know what? Here's another aha moment for you in Alberta. Many of your children and your clients' children that you're serving, if you actually ask them what do they expect, they would tell you, Elaine, we have a good life. We don't need all that fancy stuff that you were talking about in that text, the facade. What we need is mom and dad to have time to enjoy the fruit of their labor. They've worked their butts off for 40 years and it's time for them to have some fun. And Wes and I had our medical insurance updated and we had to see our doctor together. He's a big South African guy. He plays rugby, Dr. Nell, so just pretend really, really big. He leans over his desk with his finger pointing. He says, look, you two, you are now 60 years old. It's time for you to have some fun. Because let me tell you, as a doctor, it all falls apart when you're 75. Oh, good. Okay, so everybody here in the room who's over 75, stand up. No, just kidding. If we had more time, I would know exactly how old all of you are, because guess what? You are not 21 anymore, some of you. Okay? So here's the role expectation stuff. The chicken farmer had a father who wanted to make everybody equal, his sisters to have the same net worth as him. But he'd been helping create, keep, and capture his father's wealth for almost 30 years. And that family is no longer a family. And the tipping point was a difference in agreement over the purchase price for $150K. Sad, right? And even sadder is now there's a fallout of divorce. Okay, here's another question. Elaine, how soon do you have the succession talk? What age of kids and parents are acceptable? Well, go on my blog, and Country Guide dealt with that exact question, and it's called toddler succession. Your succession, your fairness planning starts when your son or daughter is 4 years old. What are you talking about? When Ian was 4 years old, he went to the crop right beside our house with his father after it had just been planted in a few days, started digging down into the dirt. And that's when he realized that seeds have to die to sprout a germination to get going, to get to those lovely cotyledons. Oh, I can talk like an agronomist. A cotyledon and all that other good stuff coming. Flag stage, all those things you guys know like the back of your hand. When Ian saw that, he got so excited about farming, and then he also got excited about flying because his uncle had a Cessna, and so my son has a 4-seater Grumman plane that he flies about once a year, which really scares my husband. But Ian has lots of diverse interests, but they all started as a very young child. And at our table, we'd say, what's the price of canola right now? And in Boys of Maine, we have this thing where all the little children talk about Santa Claus and what they want for Christmas. And I read this in the paper, and it said, I just want Santa to know we need better barley prices. That's what he wanted for Christmas. The kid was 6 years old, and he was concerned about the price of barley. So this question is a serious question. So when do we have the talk? It's not just the talk. It's a series of unfolding conversations, but if you need the talk is usually driven by a health concern. Dad has cancer, worked with a man who was he had throat cancer, he was going to lose his voice in 2 weeks. We called an emergency meeting to get that vision and the expectations outlined, because if we didn't do that, he was going to not have a voice to tell us anymore. So this is a very good question. How soon do you have it? It's ongoing. And you also understand that succession is not an event. June 16th, 1992 was the day that Wes and Elaine got title to a really nice farm, which we also paid for. But June 16th, 1992 was also the day that Wes's 3 sisters, 2 of whom have lived in Alberta since 1979, each were gifted a quarter section of land. What do you mean, Elaine? It didn't happen in the will? No, because you need to know I have a bias about this issue, is that just because Wes is the only son and the youngest, he doesn't get everything. And his mother, Margaret, who bought the farm in 1945, she was raised by a wicked stepmother. And that's the truth. So at Christmas time, if let's say my sister in Calgary, Edie, who's a lawyer, was renovating her kitchen, and she got a check for $8,000 from the parents to help out with the renovation, which she really didn't need, but they gave it to her anyway, we all would get checks for $8,000. And my lawyer's looking at this, and he said, can I be adopted into the Froese family? That sounds like a really nice family. And it was. But what was really interesting is I told you about the wicked stepmother, because another thing about, for those of you who work in the field, that is very helpful for you is to just start asking, I'm curious, and curious is a good preface to helping draw people out. And you say, I'm just curious, how did you get this farm? Tell me the story. Because Margaret's stepmother was so wicked to her, she made sure that each kid always got the same. But we got a $500,000 farm that we paid for, and the sisters each got a quarter section of land in 1992, which was worth $67,000. Again, all the young people want to run to Manitoba and buy a $67,000 quarter. You're about 26 years too late. Because now that same quarter, when Ian bought his first quarter, it was $220 because his landlord broke the lease. And he said, Mom and Dad, I'm 21, where do I come up with $220K? And we said, okay, son, We have a quarter section that's $100,000. We're going to gift it to you now. Do you see what I'm doing? Sometimes assets in fairness in farm transition have to transfer with a warm hand, not a cold one. And I hope all of you get the experience of watching or being with someone pass into the next across the river and leave this earth. Because it's such a defining experience to see that shell, to see the spirit gone, and to just see what we leave behind. Have any of you in Grand Prairie, Three Hills, Foremost, Manyberries, Sedalia, Grimby, Rocky Mountain, all those other places I love to go, have you ever seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul? No. Right? So this is the expectations. Each child, what you expect, does the money only go, okay, so now I'm going to get tweeted to death. Does money ever only go to the boys? Yeah, in some families. My aunts got an education. One was a nurse, one was a teacher, but their sons all got a portion of a farm, which my father left as the oldest child, split from the Eadie clan, from his dairy farm, and started a Hereford farm. I've chased a lot of cows, thus the cow, the bull. Actually, it's an ox, technically. So what you need to understand is that the conversation about fairness also has two systems in it. So this is your family. This is red because it's like a heart. This is what you want to have legacy and create for you as a family. But this triangle that's green represents money, profit, viability. This is the farm system. But what's happening in agriculture in Alberta? It's all getting mucked together because you can't separate it. You have to try really hard to say, is this a business issue or is this a family issue? What do we really need to do here? You also need to think about capturing the wealth. Now, Ian works with us. He has his own corporation. But I need to tell you that things change in our family. And I'll go into that story a little bit later. But this whole thing about role success is, does everybody want the same thing? Here's another quote. Let's practice this one. Different is not wrong, it's just different. Say that with me. Different is not wrong, it's just different. Okay? So these are all the things that will help you have success. If you have good written agreements, if you know what you're going to have some fun and a life beyond the farm. How you behave is going to be really important as to the culture. This is Mike, our 6'5" employee standing on top of the semi after getting the tarp off. These guys have been up all night combining corn. This is Ian taking a rest on a spilled pile of grain, and I tweeted this, and everybody wanted to know, who spilled the grain? Who spilled the grain? Who spilled? It doesn't matter. Mistakes happen. But what's their passion to manage risk? And deadlines help make people think. So we gave Ian until he was 27 to say, are you in or you're out? Well, he decided when he was 25. Okay, so I think my clock says I have 20 seconds left here. Oh no, we're good, I have 14 minutes. I'll go by this clock. All right. Okay, Elaine, my biggest fairness issue is balance between the siblings and splitting up the farm. And I'm a farm family business partner. I'm president of Froese Family Farms. Wes is president of Boisevane Select Seeds. Don't let CRA know that the presidents are sleeping together because I don't think that's arm's length. Yeah. Okay. Elaine, what do you do when it's dangerous? Oh, I love you guys. What do you do when it's dangerous to have all the family members sitting in the same room? I have had that experience. I was in downtown Edmonton on the 23rd floor of some shishi law office with a speakerphone, mediating a family because the brothers absolutely refused to be in the same room. So what you do when you're not going to have safety is that it would be really smart of you to get an outside facilitator, somebody who can come and keep it safe and respectful. Okay, another question. How do you get the founder not to have the work all day attitude and actually give the founder a deadline? Are anyone besides me in this room workaholics? We will have a meeting after lunch in that corner over there. And we'll just all move to that corner. We are, because we're boomers. The typical boomer on a farm has a very strong work ethic. And in a different presentation that I'm doing tomorrow at the Tiffin Conference in Lethbridge, and please pray I get on a plane at 6 o'clock and that there's no fog, which I don't think there will be. Anyway, the slide is a contrast between the generations. And what the younger generation appreciates about us is our work ethic. But what we don't appreciate so much about them is their need for work-life balance. Mom, you need a life. I said, Ian, I love what I do. Mom, you need to go fishing, or you need to do this. And so this whole thing about balance is actually a bit of a polarity. And if you'd like to go to agrawebinar.com, which is Farm Management Canada's website, agrawebinar.com, you can view my webinar called Managing Stubborn Farmers. Are any of you stubborn? No. So managing stubborn farmers means we have a dance. We work and we play. We work and we play. But what if, in fairness in farm transition, you are trying to get dad to have some fun, or you're trying to get mom to not do the books anymore? And those are very stereotypical comments, but that's what I find a lot. And so the deadline is, we thought we were going to have to move in 2020, but we're not now, because Ian and Kendra are going to build a house in our backyard, which breaks my half-mile rule. So I have to eat my words sometimes. But how do you get the founder to appreciate deadlines? Is you write them out on your flip chart. So if any of you are farm families and are going through this exact process yourself, which I think you are, get thee to Staples on the way home and buy yourself a flip chart. Because I just want to say thank you to the decorating committee for making me feel at home. I have 1,000 of these in my seed plant. So here I am. So you're on the flip chart, and you're writing stuff down, and you're attacking what's on the flip chart, not attacking the person. And then you all take your smartphones out at the end of the meeting, and you take pictures of every page, and you have a digital notebook of what you said you would do by when. So how do you have the founder not to have to work all day attitude? He gets to choose, or she gets to choose, the life she's always wanted. But you need to ask better questions. Are you happy? Dad, what does a good day look like here on farm? Because when my father-in-law was 78 and driving 110 feet of harrows, I came out to bring him his lunch, and his one harrow bar was like this. You guys have seen this. And I said, Dad, what did you hit? Nothing. I said, Dad, you had to, there's like, you got a serious bend at the end of that 110 feet. And that was the day we had to tell Dad that his tractor driving days were over. Okay, so you have to, there's another book, and I have a gazillion books, because what I do, I've been writing now for Grain News, and I hope some of you read my columns or read my blog. And if you don't have this sheet in front of you, please just give me your business card today and drop it in this box back at my table with the word N on it. And I want to keep this conversation going with you, because we can't know what the next stage is going to look like. Wes's father did have a brain shrinking disease, which is why we were in a hurry to get the transition done, which we did in 6 months. I had no idea my mother was going to die of an asthma attack 6 months after we started her plan. I am planning with my son and daughter-in-law right now, and I really hope that doesn't mean I'll be dead in 6 months. But I don't think so. So we all have to do the work. Okay, another question. Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear in Alberta. Okay. Okay, this is what it says. What happens when the shit hits the fan and all the will says is split everything equally between the kids, and every kid has a definition of equal? Everything's taxable, right? So what I suggest you do is go out and get a lot of monopoly money. And this is what you do. You take all this big pile of monopoly money over here, and you have a small pile over here. And then you say to this person, before, of course, they die, do you want this big pile of money to go to Justin Trudeau? Or do you want this big pile of money to go to you? And what are they going to say? To them. And again, wills are important as a risk management tool, but wills are for when you die. And people don't all die when they're old. Some people die when they're young, like my sister did. So the horse is already long out of the barn, folks, when you're reading a will. So the question is, the better question is, what does the will say? And my father's will said all of us were co-executors, the 4 remaining kids. And I said, no, Dad, just me. And the reason I did that is I have 2 out-of-province siblings. 2 of my siblings live on Vancouver Island. And if you have an estate that needs to be settled with an out-of-province executor, that just really slows your life down to the ground. But if you knew that you needed to have the land, Merle Good says you need access to land. You don't need to own it. So a better way than splitting everything in 4 would have been Elaine gets a quarter section, which she will rent back to her farming brother for X amount of dollars for 15 years with first right of refusal. See what's going on here? As a daughter, and pretend I'm not farming, as a daughter, I can get land, and then I can give access back to the farming sibling. And the other thing is, what would it look like if some of those kids helped buy that land before it was even transferred, while everyone's still alive? So who deserves what is a big question, but again, say it again, touch your head, touch your head. Love does not read minds. Say that. Love does not read minds. And if you're a carpenter, I would really like you to send it into me in some palette art. That would be awesome. Should you be looking at your farm more as a business? Yes. And allow the child with the most capable skills run and take over the spread? Absolutely. Do you have the guts to fire your oldest son? I know a family in Alberta or Saskatchewan that did that. And it was the best thing they ever did because he was running the business to rack and ruin. It wasn't working very well. If you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. So there has to be a collaborative conversation. And here's the question we started with. What does fairness look like to you? You call a family meeting, you get a talking stick, you buy a flip chart, and you meet. And make sure you've all been well fed. I'm serious. And please, this is not Christmas Day. This is not Easter. This is not Thanksgiving. This is not your mother's birthday. This is a separate family day that you set aside. Oh, and Alberta has Family Day, don't they? Yes. I kind of think the intention of Family Day was to celebrate, not to talk about tough issues, but this is the key question you need to draw out of every player in the transition process. What does fairness look like to you? My brother in Alberta used to live in Edmonton. He's now a multimillionaire in Vancouver Island. He's a real estate developer. But you would be very surprised to know what he gave me for my 60th birthday. A skid steer. $70,000 Kubota. Really nice. And I'm going, why are you doing this? He said, Elaine, Alberta's estate taxes are really good compared to BC's. And I got to make some adjustments. So I want to give you part of your inheritance now. I said, this is great. So what would you like me to do as a thank you? He said, just put little Al on the side. So you always think of me when you drive it. Well, so I have not driven this thing. I'm probably not safe to drive it, but my husband's been having a lot of fun practicing. And it's great because we're using it, and we actually move pallets around with it, and we put all kinds of stuff. Oh, somebody gave me some art. Thank you. That's awesome. So why am I telling you that story? Is, again, fair to him meant distributing some of his wealth and managing his estate before he died. So fairness is a big question. It's okay to ask for help. So if you're that party who texted me and say, Elaine, what happens when it's too dangerous to be together in the same room? Then you really need to have a facilitator. So if we step back, would step one not be to make sure the initial business plan for those currently owning or purchasing the business be to put out our vision statement and goals down on paper? Wouldn't we make future transition easier if we started off on the same page with a similar vision? Yeah. It always makes marriages last longer when you come to the altar and say, I do until death do us part, if you really mean it. And if you really want your marriage to be the kind of partnership where you align your goals, and in marriage you can be different and independent, but you do need to be on the same page for how you're going to grow together, correct? And the reason I'm mentioning marriage is, in agriculture today, procrastination, conflict avoidance, and divorce are killing us. And I don't know how many of you have divorce in your circle, but I've gone through 4 divorces in 2017. None of them my own. Just want you to be clear. Both rings are on, wedding, anniversary. But wouldn't it make it easier if we started? Yes, absolutely. So even just starting at the vision process would be really important. Okay. When I asked Dad about vision, legacy, oh, nice father. When I asked Dad about vision and legacy, he says, build your own. That's great, because you have a father who's very direct and very clear. So when I work with farm families, I want to talk about, home is where the hurt is. I want to change the title of this slide to home is where the HEARD is. Because on Pinterest, which I don't go on very often, if any of you, by the way, have Herefords, this is a shout out, I need a really nice shot of a herd of Herefords. If you could send that to me, I would be deeply grateful. Because in my transition plan, most of my parents' personal belongings were not well respected when they died. So I need a Hereford shot, because if you retitle this slide, home is where the herd is, rather than the hurt. These are the things, you have a father that says, when I asked Dad about vision and legacy, he says, build your own. Well, then he's being very clear. So that's what a lot of young people are doing, is if they're not getting along with their parents and they can't get on the same page, then at my last slide that we'll get to, we talk about what do you do when things don't work out. And that's chapter 10 of my book in Farming's In-Law Factor. So I pray my wife will inherit lots of cash so that I can buy out my sister. Is that kind of like hoping to win the lottery? Sister gets half the land. Okay, sister gets half the land and the parents don't want to talk about transition. Yes. And if you're the guy sending me this text, let's talk. Because the deal is you need to put that business plan on there and say, look, I don't need to necessarily own the land, but I need access to it. But this happened to a farm family I was working with in another province. And I was clear, ma'am, this is not a good idea. Ma'am, this is not a good idea. She did it anyway. She was a young widow. And now the sister who has access and owns half the land won't even rent it to her brother. So this guy's land base has now been cut in half. Okay, I have to wrap up because my phone does say it's 10:30 in Alberta. So this has to stop, and you should also not destroy signs, but this is what people do in my neighborhood. If you have a camera, if you tweet, this would be a good one to shoot. Being fair is an intentional act of your heart. It's what your intention is, and you have no intention to cause harm. Okay, I need to stop because it's between you and the break, so I'll just do 2 more questions and I'll wrap. How do you deal with a wife and husband with 2 different trains of thought and very firm on their thoughts as to the will should say, and the boys are stuck in the middle? That's when I think you need to ask for outside facilitation. In Stony Plain, you have John Suman. In Lacombe, you have Reg Sandro. In Red Deer, you have Jonathan Small. In Lethbridge, you have Glenn Dodstrom. And in Canada, you have Elaine Froese. So I don't care who you pick. I have lots of colleagues with CAFANET that could also be a help to you. And I want to end on this slide. This is my husband, Wes, who I haven't shown you a picture of yet. This picture was taken the day his new pickup arrived, which is this thing. On October 2nd, I was flying to Chilliwack, BC to work with families. And I got a text that said, Mom, call home ASAP. And you know that's never really a good text to get. Wes was checking the soybean fields and crashed his pickup, which wasn't as nice as this one. This, I think, is a 2017. His was a 2015. And he hit a hydro trailer and was airlifted to Winnipeg. Huge trauma to our family. What is fair now that he's healing from 11 broken ribs, a brain concussion, and an AC separation in his shoulder? You guys love to make deals and buy your new trucks. You don't want to pay more than you have to. So I thought the truck was a good metaphor for finding fairness, because when you do a deal to buy a piece of equipment, a new vehicle or land, you want it to be fair. So you have to know what your finances look like. You need to know what you can afford. But you also have to have an attitude of respect with the person you're dealing with, or else they're going to say, don't deal with Charlie, he's such a tightwad, you don't want to do business with him. And what is your intent? Your intent is to get a good deal, but your intent is also to make sure that you get good service, right? And then the last one is role. So that's what we've talked about today. So I want to thank you for being engaging. Thank you for giving me the next 3 years of my writing in my little phone, because I am very committed to the threads of conversation that I hear. And I want you to think about, what legacy are you leaving? And if you're the guy who has the father who says, don't count on me, buddy, go and make your own, I want you to just really figure out what you're going to do to focus and get her done. Blessings on your journey in Alberta. Let me know how I can serve you. Bring your sheets back to my box, and let's all be intentional about empowering our families. It's your farm, it's your family, it's your choice. God bless. Thank you.